besties. Welcome back to another episode of Bon Voyage Besties. We're so excited about today's guest. She's a familiar voice you might remember from a past episode. Melissa is back. Hooray! Originally from the US, Melissa has been living abroad since 2017 and is the founder of A Solo Woman Traveling, a travel blog and tour company all about slow, authentic European adventures. Now, moving abroad might sound totally glamorous. I know I daydream about this literally every day, but as Melissa knows, it's not always sunsets and sangria. Today, she's joining us to spill the real tea on what it's actually like to pack up your life and start fresh overseas. So grab your coffee, settle in, and let's get into it. Welcome back, Melissa. It was so awesome seeing you in Paris this year.
Yeah, I know. It's fun to do this episode now that we've actually met.
I know. And I want to go back so badly. So for listeners who might be new, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what A Solo Woman Traveling is all about?
So I'm still a solo woman, single, living in Portugal right now. But as you mentioned, I did grow up in the US. I'm from the US. And I created A Solo Woman Traveling back in 2019 to put together travel guides to help women feel more comfortable traveling abroad. And then over time, that has kind of evolved into wanting to spend more time with other fellow travel enthusiasts. So I created the small group tours in Europe. So, in a nutshell, that's what I'm doing.
That's so awesome. Yeah, I remember when I saw you last, you were still living in Portugal, and it looks absolutely magnificent. It's been like 10 years since I've been to Portugal, so I definitely need to go back and plan a return trip for sure.
Yes.
So I know we talked about this a little bit on our first episode with you, but could you discuss a bit about where your journey began and what inspired you to make that big move overseas? Because it really is a huge deal to pack up your life and to move abroad.
Yeah, absolutely. In 2017, I actually moved to Germany. I moved to Berlin. It was around 6 months of planning before I could make this happen. But when you move to Germany, you're moving without a guarantee. So it was kind of like on a wish and a prayer that it's going to work out. You have to kind of apply for everything in person after you've fully relocated and registered with a tax number and everything. So back then, I was just motivated to live in Europe. At the time I was 37, so I was kind of getting a little older and I didn't have kids or anything like most of my friends. And I thought, like, why not try this? So that's kind of what motivated, and that's where I went first.
That's so brave. And giving my age, I just turned 38 earlier this year. And I totally understand the urge to just be like, it's now or never. Why not pack everything up and give it a try? Because you're not getting younger, unfortunately. I was thinking that today as I was doing my skincare routine. I was like, this is the youngest I'll ever be. It's so bad. So when you first moved abroad to Berlin, you said there was a lot of things you had to do in person. So what were some of the biggest surprises that you encountered in that initial move?
Well, it's really complicated with taxes if you're a US citizen and you move abroad. So those were things I didn't really research out that well. And the country I chose had a really high tax rate. So that was quite a surprise to me and something I would definitely tell anyone who's thinking of moving abroad. Really understand what the tax situation is going to be for you, like what the tax rate's going to be for you. And are there other countries with better deals that you could also think you could be happy in? Because I was quite shocked when it came time to file taxes in Germany.
My gosh, out of curiosity, how high was the tax rate? Because that sounds terrifying.
At the time, 35 or 38. It's different for everybody depending on your situation, but that's what I was looking at. And for anyone that doesn't know, this is super important. If you are a US resident, you'll always have to file in the US. Whether you have to pay anything is dependent on your situation, but there is a chance that you will have to pay in both countries. So it was a shock.
Oh my gosh, yeah. My family, I come from a family of accountants, so that's always something in the back of my mind is the tax situation because it's one of those unsexy things about moving abroad that you don't necessarily want to think about. I know for me, and I live in the US, I have no excuse. I waited until October 10th to file my taxes. I was on extensions because I just hate thinking about it so much. But it's true. When you move abroad, you not only have to think about the country that you're staying in, but also US taxes, because, like you said, you'll never get out of not filing United States taxes. No matter where you live in the world, Uncle Sam is going to track you down.
Yeah, I know.
That's so sad. So always budget for that. So how about the biggest myths about living abroad? Because we have this idea that it's going to be really like glamorous and that everything is going to be perfect. So, what myths do people have about their preconceived notions about moving overseas? And what's the reality? Because I feel like this is so important because there's all this inspo on social media and it's really cool to think about, but it's not necessarily the reality.
Thing, and this is always dependent on where you go. It's not cheaper. Yeah, I mean, some things are cheaper. For example, where I'm living in Portugal now, groceries are cheaper than in the US. But then again, if you're not making euros and you're making dollars, you have to do that conversion. And then is it that much cheaper? It might not really be that much cheaper. That's something that I see a lot on social media about moving abroad, like especially in Europe. Oh, it's so much cheaper now. If you move somewhere in like Southeast Asia, maybe it really is. But from my experience living here in Europe, it's not all that much cheaper.
Yeah, and I know like where you live now, Portugal, like it may have been cheaper 10 years ago, but I think the prices have gone up quite a bit in Portugal, haven't they?
Yes, it's a little more expensive than Berlin at this point, which was completely the opposite when, I had thought about moving here. I was like, oh, it's going to be cheaper than in Germany. I will say they have better tax deals here in Portugal. Depending on your situation, you should, obviously talk to accountants and whatnot about that. And so that was a draw for me. But yeah, it's gotten really expensive for what you're getting, especially with housing.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting because even like it's true, like whenever I go on threads, I read a lot of stuff about how so many things are supposedly cheaper over in Europe, but you're right, like depending on the location where you live and you do the conversion, it may not necessarily be the case. So it's always so important to do your research and not be like me and just kind of YOLO it with the conversions. I know when I was in Japan, granted, it was just for 3 weeks, I wasn't living there. I was just too lazy to figure out the conversion from yen to dollars. And I'm like, oh, I'll figure it out when I get back. I got my credit card statement and was like, yeah, even though it was a good exchange rate, probably in the future, don't do that.
Yeah, you want to know, you got to have that app on your phone.
Yeah, for sure. So, aside from money, are there any other really big myths about moving overseas that people should know about before they make that leap and decide to pack up their lives and go?
Well, what is a myth that you've heard that I can debunk for you?
Like something that I have come across now, granted this was more a couple years ago, there was this whole thing on social media about how like things are going to be almost like perfect when you move overseas, like life in your home state or your home city is miserable, and if you want to make friends and get outside your comfort zone and lead an amazing, incredible life, you almost have to do like this move. But I have a feeling that it's really just like real life, but in another place. But I wanted to know your thoughts on that because there really is a lot of, I think, still on social media that everything will be perfect and change for the better if you just move overseas.
I mean, it can definitely take a while to make friends. And I found that like building a circle isn't as easy, depending on how old you are as well. Like if you're my age, like in your 40s, you're not doing the things you did when you were younger, like going out to bars and maybe being as social. And so for that reason, it can take like a long time to build a network of people. And so that can lead to a bit of like loneliness and you feeling a little out of place, feeling a little like, what are you missing out on back home? That is something for sure people need to consider when deciding they want to move abroad.
Yeah, definitely. And I know for me, like if I were to move overseas, I would always think about what the holidays would be like because I am a Christmas girly and I could see being like extra nostalgic during that time of the year in particular, like just those big holidays. So, how would you recommend making friends overseas, like in your 40s? Because I know a lot of our listeners, they tend to be in their 30s and 40s. And like you said, my travel style, it's so different than it was in my 20s. Like I used to stay in hostels, I would go on the pub crawls. Like I think if I did that now, I would low key die. So things have definitely changed.
Yeah, I mean, finding your like interests and finding groups that have those interests, like if you're into reading, finding those book clubs. And there are like events. So there's pages like meetup.com. Internations is another one that always has like really cool events. And some of them are during the day. So maybe they're like yoga ones or they're like walking ones. So those are the kinds of things that's how I met all my friends in Berlin when I first moved there during like a wine tasting on an Internations meetup.
Okay, that's really cool. And it's kind of like what I did when I first moved up here to North Jersey. Like I found a book club, I found a restaurant club. So just like tuning into those interests, you eventually do meet like-minded people, but it's definitely all about putting yourself out there for sure. So how about for you? What were some of the hardest adjustments that you had to make, whether it's emotionally, culturally, or practically? Because like we've said a lot, it is a huge deal to just pack up and move overseas. Social media makes it look easy, but it's not.
Yeah, it is a lot of work. I mean, I never want to discourage anyone, and I don't want this to be all like, oh, it's so, so hard because it has its pluses and minuses. And the minuses are definitely all this paperwork that you're going to have to do, getting the visa itself, whether that's in Germany or here in Portugal or one of the other countries, because there's so many now that offer like digital nomad visas. There's so much to keep track of. It gets expensive. It kind of creeps up on you and just yeah, in general, just all that's kind of expected, including like working a regular job and like living a life. You have almost another job by just getting yourself, to the other country and following through with all the requirements and the legalities.
Which would you say was easier, Germany or Portugal with the amount of paperwork? Because like you said, visas, like that's a big deal and you really need to know what you're doing.
The visas I bought, so in Germany it was the like freelancer visa. And then the one I have here in Portugal is a little different. The one in Portugal was a lot easier to get. It was dependent on, it's called the D7 visa. So it's a passive income visa. So if you meet those requirements, it was a lot easier than the freelancer visa in Germany, where you're basically convincing Germany that they should let you in because you have something to offer that no one else can offer. So it's a lot more upfront. And I had to put together a business plan and just a lot of that kind of stuff and find this specific niche that would make me stand out to the German economy versus
Wow.
Portugal is a lot easier.
That's really intense. I would be so scared putting together a business plan because I'm kind of like shy when it comes to promoting myself. I really need to be better about it. And just like having to prove that I'm an asset to the government, I would be terrified. I give you major props for doing that. That's awesome.
I mean, Germany does have another visa, like the artist visa. So if you're a photographer or in the arts of something like that, then that visa, from what I've heard, is a little bit easier to get. It's not the same.
Okay, cool. So you have like the paperwork aspect. How about culturally? What were some of the challenges with getting adjusted to moving to a new place? Because I know it's definitely exciting. And like we said earlier, we don't want this to be an episode where we just like kind of shit all over moving abroad because it really is amazing and it's something I would love to experience one day. But it can be, tough.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I'm so grateful to be able to have lived in these countries, and I can't expect it to be so easy for me because I'm not in my home country and I don't speak the language fully. And so that is one of the hardest things is the language barrier, depending on where you're at. In Portugal, it's been pretty reasonable in the center, but if you leave the center, then very little English is going to be spoken. In Germany, similar situation. The center of Berlin, it was not a problem. Actually, when I would learn German and speak it with the locals, they would just speak back in English with me. So that far was hard. But I think that was a big challenge is when you need to get something done, right? And maybe you're in a stressful situation and the language barrier becomes an issue, it can be really frustrating.
Yeah, definitely. Can you think of any specific examples of when that happened to you?
Well, when I had my dog in Berlin and, he wasn't doing well and I'm trying to communicate with the vet and they're trying to speak to me in English, but their English wasn't great and my German wasn't good enough to really understand what they were saying. And it was just this like language barrier issue and I was very stressed out. It's the perfect example of like when you're in another country and you're dealing with stressful things, it's something to consider. So do you have the patience for it and can you endure what comes along with all that?
Yeah, and it's especially scary, like you said, if you have a pet and the pet is having a medical emergency. And I also think because I met your dog in Paris, super cute puppy. Oh my gosh, so cute. And that's like another thing I actually wanted to bring up because there's this almost like image that in order to move abroad, you have to be like totally like unattached. But you now have a pet overseas. And were there any like challenges with that or positives with that?
Yeah, so when I moved from Germany, it wasn't Ted because he wasn't born
Yeah.
yet. It was my other two dogs, Duncan and Kingston. So I brought two over.
Wow, good for you. That's awesome. 2 dogs.
Yeah, and there's a lot of paperwork from the US on the US side to bring them over that no one looked at when I arrived, but I had it in case they did. So you just have to go through the hoops to make sure that they've got all their requirements and the paperwork that needs to be filled out by the State Department, et cetera, et cetera. So you can do it. You have to, it's expensive. That's the other thing I'll tell people. It's not cheap. And I know someone who's doing it now from California to Portugal, and she's bringing her cats, and it's expensive. So that's
How much
something
is
to.
it? Do you know?
I mean, I remember for myself, I think it was maybe 400 or so each dog for just one of the paperwork stamp of approval. It was 4 or 6. I can't remember what it was, but it was a lot. That just really adds to the cost of everything.
Yeah, and it's stressful too because then you have to like move the pets over there. Like I always think about like these poor animals like doing that international flight and I don't have pets of my own. My brother has a dog who I absolutely adore. She's like the cutest thing ever. But I think of her in the cargo hold and it gives me like heart palpitations. So that has to be stressful for a pet owner as well.
Yeah, I mean, my dogs were so small, they rode in the cabin with me. So I couldn't imagine though having to put them in the cargo hold though. It's a
No.
lot.
To check on them. And I know like you can't like get down there once you're in flight, but I would be like even a worse flyer than I already am if my pets were down below in the cargo hold. I don't know if I could handle it.
Yeah, I mean, have you heard of that airline Bark Air that's becoming pretty popular? Yeah, it's like a
No, no.
yeah, so they have flights from the US to Europe.
Well,
So
that's
for
so
anyone listening this,
cool.
yeah, look them up.
That's awesome. What is it called again?
Bark Air.
Bark Air. Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. I'm definitely going to check them out after this episode because like that's something like that I've heard of a lot, like people wanting to move overseas but they're worried about possibly having to rehome their pets. So it's nice to know that like this is an option for them to bring their fur babies with them because they are really like family.
100%.
Yeah. So, with living overseas, you're living abroad now. How do you handle homesickness or loneliness when it hits? Because sometimes this will happen to me if I'm doing a trip that's a bit longer, but I know it's an entirely different animal when you're an expat.
Yeah, I feel lucky now though that we have like video calls and we can set and like do Zooms and stuff because that wasn't a thing. Like, I mean, in 2017, I'm sure it was. I just wasn't doing it as much. I wasn't using WhatsApp as much as I am now. And I'm just pretty regular with my contact with friends and family on WhatsApp. So I don't experience the homesickness as much. And I've been doing it for so long for myself. I think I'm good. But for those of you who are thinking you do it for the first time, I would just make sure you set aside that time and like get your family and friends to commit to like doing a Zoom call with you like once a week, once every couple weeks.
Yeah, because it is true, like seeing the person's face on like a FaceTime call or a Zoom call, it does really make a huge difference. And I know that there's another aspect of this too. Like I was listening to a YouTube episode recently about moving abroad and just the whole idea of FOMO, but back home. Like normally we think of FOMO like, oh, people are doing all these amazing things overseas. But then there's also like the FOMO of back home, say if people are having kids or there's weddings going on or other big milestones that you're just like not a part of. Is there any advice for how to handle that?
I mean, if their event is that important to you, definitely maybe go back for it if you can, right? I know like if there were a wedding of like one of my best friends that I'll definitely have to just go there for it because it can be tough.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like that's one area where I would be okay. I'm not a big wedding person. I think they're kind of boring. So it would be kind of nice to have the excuse of being overseas. But that's like obviously, not everyone, but it is true. Just like, and also like having the funds set aside to like make those flights home because I feel like we keep going back to the money thing. You definitely want to make sure your ducks are all in a row with that because if you have to make a last minute flight home, it can be quite expensive to do that.
Yeah, it is one of the reasons I like being in Portugal because from where I grew up in Boston, there is a direct flight and there's many of them. When I was living in Germany, it was further. I also lived in Greece for a minute. We haven't really touched on that one, but it was such a short time. And that was even further. And that was one of the reasons when I moved from Greece to Portugal, it was like, I need to get a little bit closer to the East Coast.
Yeah, that's definitely something to consider. I feel so lucky with this because living in the New York City metro area, you pretty much have tons of options for flights. Like I can't imagine not being near an international airport because it is true. Like even like with me, I would love to move to Greece. I absolutely adored Greece when I went this summer. And we have to talk more about Greece because I want to make a return trip and I know it's one of your favorite countries ever. So we definitely need to talk about it. But yeah, I know even for me, just for vacation, there was a direct flight between Newark and Athens, but the flight back was close to 10 hours. And that's a long time to be on an airplane. It certainly adds up.
Yeah. And the time difference, because it's further than like, say, Portugal.
Yeah, definitely like something to consider too, for sure. So, how has living abroad changed your perspective on home?
Such a hard one. I feel so much more aligned living here, mainly because of the cities I was like, and even had some transit. I love how transit friendly Europe is in most places. I love how it's so walkable, right? Like that's one of the big things. And so I don't miss that about where I was living in the States. Like I want the walkability, to not have to have a car. It seems to be very focused on family. So if you have one of those and you're going to move your family over, I think you'll feel like you'll fit right in because the Europeans here definitely put a big emphasis on that. And people just take a little bit more time. I feel like I don't want to go back to the US. I know
Blame
it's
you.
not a secret. I'm done.
I don't blame you. I know we talked about the expense, but like New Jersey, highest property taxes in the United States. I'm sure for me, even though it would still be expensive to move overseas, it's probably cheaper in a lot of ways because those property taxes here, man, I don't know if I would miss those too much if I decided to make the move over to Europe for sure. I like the walkability too. I like the sense of just being able to go outside and there's like places that you could go and chill and hang out. It's really nice as opposed to like having to take a car everywhere. So how would you say moving abroad has shaped you as a person as a whole?
I'm so much more confident in almost everything I do because I went through so many different processes to get here. The first time at Germany, like you pointed out, was intense. Not a lot of people, I think, could stand for all that you have to go through. And so when you get to the other side and you actually get approved and you get your residency, it really strengthens like your self-worth and your inner confidence for sure. I'm definitely feeling like more capable than I did before ever making these. Now I feel like I could move anywhere. So
That's awesome. Is there any like one specific moment where you like just had so much pride in yourself and you're like, yes, I did this. I conquered this challenge.
getting the visas in Germany because I got two. I got the first one and then I got renewed during the pandemic times, which was very frustrating and difficult. And I had to go back twice. They weren't exactly explaining what was missing on my application until I had figured it out. I wasn't sure it was even going to work out, but then it did. And that was such a great moment, such a big accomplishment.
Yeah, you should be proud of yourself, especially like during the pandemic too, where it's like not as many things were open. It might have been harder to get like service with the paperwork. So the fact that you were able to do that is really impressive. I don't know if I would have had the patience for it. I might have crawled into a ball and cried, but who knows? Maybe. But I think like too, like the other thing that's really impressive in your case is that you did all of this solo. Like I'm, a solo female traveler. I don't travel solo quite as much anymore. I have a lot of friends now that I've made on my travels and I feel like I meet a lot of people who I've met on previous trips. But I do think the fact that you're able to do all of this alone is really impressive and inspiring for people because I think a lot of the time when we see people moving abroad, it's with other family members and I love to see that this is possible when it's just you.
Absolutely. And I mean, you can hire help. I have hired relocation agents to look over my documents to go with me to the appointments. And I do really recommend that. You don't always need it because it can also be another expense. But I highly recommend it. I would rather have spent the money and have someone look something over than send everything in, find out that I missed something and have to start over or maybe get a no. So it has always been worth it for me to hire
Yeah,
a professional.
definitely. Yeah, I always like to say, like, I have no problem paying for convenience when it comes to certain things to make my life easier. How do you go about finding relocation support? Because I'm not sure like where I would go to even start that. So this is good. I'm taking notes in my head.
Yeah, I mean, you start with Google, of course, and then I always filter them into the Facebook groups. So if you find an agency that looks good to you and you go down the reviews and hit Reddit, go search and see if anyone's had anything to say about that agency. And then finally, I would go to the Facebook groups and see if you can talk to people that have done it, that have maybe worked with them. That's a good place to start. Or if you see any red flags, I mean, people usually post about the bad experiences versus the good. So just because maybe you don't find anything doesn't mean it's bad. It just might mean that people didn't feel the need to say it was great in a Facebook group or Reddit or anything.
Another nice thing about like moving abroad now, there are just so many good resources. Like, I'm not on Facebook too much anymore, but I've heard from multiple people that Facebook groups are a fantastic resource if you're moving overseas, as well as Reddit. Do you have any particular recommendations for online groups that people should start with if they're considering making the move overseas?
I mean, I would start with Facebook and I would start with searching for the country and find the one with the most members. You can usually tell that that one's going to be the most engaged. And sometimes it'll tell you on Facebook like how many posts there are a day. So there's a couple for Portugal. I mean, I can give them to you and you can put them in the show notes if that's something that you want to include. But it's just a quick search in Facebook for that relocation. Expat groups is what you want to look for.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I feel like you'll get like good advice as opposed to just like relying 100% on Google because these are real people and they're not always getting like sponsored to cover any of these agencies. So you'll find good information. I know I like to use Facebook groups sometimes just for traveling and not even, relocating overseas because I've gotten so much helpful information and advice that I wouldn't have necessarily found on my own.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's really, really cool. So, what is one thing that you wish people knew about the less glamorous side of expat travel, just like right off the bat?
I think it's mostly that like, it's going to be a lot of work, right? It's going to be more work than you might expect, and it can be incredibly frustrating when you're going through the process of getting, your approval. It's worth it, but it's so much that goes into it. And I know a lot of people just blindly run over into this process and they don't research things like the tax stuff or what happens if I get sick? You need to have that health insurance, the good health insurance too. So it's for like do all that homework. So when you do arrive and you're going to be prepared for all these things that come up, these, I wouldn't call them roadblocks, frustrating days. Like you got to be ready for them. Like you're going to get through them and it will be worth it, but they're going to happen. It's not going to be the easiest process. So
The health insurance situation is a big deal because, like, I know being American, it's something that we always have to think about. Do you have any like insurance companies that you would recommend? Because I know sometimes people just use like travelers insurance, but I wanted to know like your thoughts on that.
well, when you move abroad, you're likely going to need to get either like an international plan that's not travel insurance. It's not usually accepted for visas. I can't speak to all the visas. I can say I'm using Cigna and I've had good experience with Cigna, though I didn't really read the fine print, of course. So don't be like me, read the fine print. I didn't realize that like I was only going to get covered if like I had to have surgery or if it were like it was more of an emergency policy. After I got the visa, now I have like the country's policy, like one of the country's health insurance companies. So one that's Portugal based. And in Germany, it was the same. In Germany, it was even harder. They want you to have a German insurer. And it can be difficult to get approved. You'd think, like, well, I need this insurance. I'll go get the insurance. But it's not always so simple. It's just like when you want the bank account, you need the bank account. But some banks will be like, well, you need your visa. I'm like, well, I need the bank account to get my visa. And you just go around this circle, right? So you got to do a lot of that research to figure out which ones are the best ones, which ones will work for, my visa. But yeah, I like Cigna. That's what I use for Greece, and that's what I had for Portugal before getting my national plans, the word I was thinking of.
Okay, so Cigna is a good one to use. Yeah, because I think too, there's like this idea of like, especially with Europe, like I'll just move over there and they'll take care of me because they have universal health care. But I guess that's not always the case.
No, I never even used the public system. I don't even think that I could. You always have to look and see like what you're qualified to use. Because as a temporary resident, like you're always a temporary resident, even though like until you get the permanent residency, you're just temporary. So it's not the same. You're not looked at as like a citizen or even a permanent resident.
Yeah, so always look into the fine print, guys, especially when it comes to your health. Because even just like traveling, I have to do that with Chase Bank. Like I have some really good travel credit cards, but their travel insurance doesn't cover medical. So because it doesn't cover medical, like I have to be really careful and have supplemental insurance. Otherwise, I'd be in, really big trouble with that.
Absolutely.
So it's super duper important. So what other common mistakes do you see new expats make when they first make the initial move abroad?
Hmm. Let me think. I feel like we touched on already, basically just the tax stuff again, just thinking that they don't have to report, so they don't have to report that. That is definitely something that, like, I've had conversations with people and they still didn't realize that they were going to have to file in the US, even though they've moved over here.
I can imagine getting hit with those penalties too, like for filing late, especially if you had to pay interest to the IRS. I'd be so mad. I'd be like, "Are you kidding me?" Because that's the last thing like that you need with a big move overseas, for sure. So yeah, guys, always like know your taxes, get a good accountant. Do you have any like recommendations for finding an accountant? Because I know like expat taxes is just like such a different situation.
Yeah, I would definitely for that, I would go into the groups again because it is kind of difficult to find the best ones. You want to kind of get a referral from people that have been using these accountants that are already live here.
Yeah, definitely. So, for anyone wanting to make that big move, moving overseas, do you have any places that you'd recommend? I know you've lived in Germany and Portugal, but just from like your work as a tour guide and being in the travel industry, do you have any places that would be really like good for someone who wants to make that move for the first time?
I really do like Portugal, so I would recommend it. It's going to be an easier path forward. Germany is a great place if you can get your company to transfer you there. Then that's a little different. I loved living in Germany. I love Berlin so much. I just the best experiences, but the ease of like kind of moving over here and going through a process, I found Portugal to be better. The Greece digital nomad visa was also pretty reasonable to get. So that would definitely be an option for those who want to like live in Greece and live by the water. And yeah,
Yeah,
nice place.
tell me a bit more about living in Greece. I know you were only there for a brief time, but I have Greece on the brain, girl. Ever since I went to Crete, I'm like trying to think of a way to go back because I loved it so much.
Oh, it's so great because you can go to the islands, so easily. And if the weather's great and the off season, there are some islands that would be open. You could go. It's definitely possible. It's not going to be the same. Not everything's going to be open like it would be in like June, July, and August. But it's a nice life, and the Greek people are just so amazing. I love the Greek people. I love the Portuguese people. I just love them. They're so much more welcoming than I could have ever hoped for. In that respect, I think it's great.
Yeah, like when I went to Greece, that was one thing that really stood out was just how kind and amazing the people were to us. They were so warm and so kind. We actually got kind of messed up on Crete because we were supposed to go to another beach, one of the famous ones, but there was a car accident. So the only like way into the port was this one road, and then we missed our ferry. It was like a whole thing. And then we ended up finding this little like beach bar instead that was family run, and the staff was just so welcoming, so kind. We ended up just spending the whole day there because they were just so like warm and lovely. So I feel like having that like kind of environment when you move overseas, and it could be a little bit scary, going somewhere where you've heard good things about like hospitality can be a big help.
Absolutely. I would highly recommend it.
Yeah, 1000%. Oh, I want to go back to Greece so bad, and Portugal too. Any cities in Portugal you recommend moving to? Because I'm like, have Portugal on the brain now as well.
Yeah, you've got to come over. I mean, there's direct flights to Lisbon, so you got to come check it out for yourself.
It's, like, so easy to get a flight over there. So, I know you've been running, a solo woman traveling for quite a while now. What inspired you to start it? Because you have your own business. It's a different situation for you. You don't have, like, another, like, company sponsoring you. So we would love to hear some more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. The tours in general or just the brand itself?
Just the brand itself, and then we could talk about the tours too if you want, because I wanna go on one of your tours. They look so fun.
I would love that. Yeah, they are so fun. I mean, I just created it basically because I'd gotten so many questions about, where should I go? And I always loved finding good restaurants when traveling. That was like always my favorite thing. And so like collecting those became this idea of like, well, I should put them all in one place. And I wasn't trying to monetize, or I didn't really understand like a blog could be a business. I didn't really even read a whole lot of blogs. But anytime I would look online for good restaurants, I would stumble upon a blog and found really great recommendations. And I thought, hey, I could do this. Because I tried their recommendations and they were like, okay. And then I was like, well, I found this great restaurant. I should put it online. And so this kind of started as a project for me to share everything that I was doing. And over time, like it became more only because it just became like not fulfilling enough. Like I was writing these things that I don't know if anyone was reading it. It felt like, who am I doing this for? And so then after, my dog had passed away in 2024, I decided like kind of on a whim that I was just going to host some tours. I was going to put it out there that I was going to create a trip in Greece, and I put it out there and it sold out like within a couple of weeks as well, which was kind of surprising. And it was about that connection. I wanted that connection with other women who wanted to travel but maybe weren't confident enough in their ability to plan the trip, or they just weren't comfortable enough to be in another country alone.
And I know this is going a little bit off topic, but about the tours, like Rosa and I have discussed, like, possibly running a tour in the future. What's that experience been like? Because it really is a cool business concept. And it's one that if you want to move overseas, it can follow you like anywhere. It's not necessarily tied down to a specific location.
Yeah, it's a wonderful experience if you really have to love working with people because you're hosting, so you're like the mom. So if that idea off the bat stresses you out, then it might not be necessarily for you. That wouldn't like you could still do something like host events, but like maybe creating a tour and being responsible for like 11 women overseas might not be the thing. But you could definitely do events and stuff. But if you are feeling like, no, I could definitely do that. I can be the leader. Yeah, it's also if you have to be really good and organized in planning. So if those two things align, then it's definitely something you could get started to do. There are a lot of things people need to consider. I wrote about this and I actually have a workshop about that. You can't just start selling travel without checking legally what's required of you, specifically depending on the state you're in.
Yeah, because that's like true too. Like, I feel like just like with, moving overseas, there's probably paperwork like involved with running tours. And I'm sure it varies from destination to destination because, like you said, you're responsible for all these people. Like, as a high school teacher, I've helped out with field trips, and there's like a lot that goes into that. And you're just like maybe going to the next town over. You're not even like going overseas.
Exactly.
Yeah, but it sounds like so much fun. Like I've just seen like pictures of your tours and like itineraries and I'm like, "Oh my god." I'm like, "One of these days I really like have to go cuz you do like a really good job curating everything." So I want you to know that.
Thank you so much. I really have enjoyed it and like meeting the women and watching them connect with the other women and like leaving with like lifelong friends. It's so special. And like we have Facebook groups and stuff. And, a year later, they're all starting to like, remember we were here last year and I can't believe it's been a year. And like I have a friend or one of the women on one of the tours is going to meet one of the other women that she met on the tour, crossing states to meet up again, which is like so cool.
That's so lovely. And I can relate to that too, because I've done a lot of trips like when I was younger, like backpacker type trips. But the people I've met on those trips, I'm still friends with a lot of them. And occasionally, like it just so happens that we're able to meet up. And it's really something special, the friendships that come from these group tours and these group experiences. So I highly recommend it. And hey, like if you move overseas and you're feeling a little lonely, there's nothing wrong about doing a group tour in your new home. Why not?
Yeah, once you learn the city, you definitely welcome people in it and be like, let me show you around.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So, you ready for a fun rapid fire round?
Okay.
All right, Melissa, you're in the hot seats. Favorite European city to live in?
Berlin.
What did you love about Berlin? I've only been one time and it was during a heat wave. So, I need to go back because it was a disaster when I went. So, sell Berlin to me.
It has everything you could ever want. It's the biggest sell. It has everything. You want a vegan grocery store? It has a vegan grocery store. You want just anything, Berlin has it. So it's very diverse. It's very well laid out, and the transportation is amazing. Yeah, it's a good place to be based in for sure. The weather,
Yeah.
what we miss, but
I feel like it would be a good place to meet other expats too, because there's just such a big thriving community there. Like, I feel like, at least for me, because I'm very much an extrovert, it would be easy to make friends in Berlin.
yeah, I hadn't mentioned that at all, and either when we talked about Berlin or Lisbon, but both have a really good expat community, and so does Athens. It's growing for sure, but Lisbon and Berlin are big ones.
All right. Most underrated travel destination.
Sevilla is a great city. I don't know enough people go to Sevilla. I've been a couple times. I love
I
Sevilla.
loved it. I've been there. Yeah, I went in April during Easter. So you had all of like the parades and whatnot. And it was very, very special to go during that time of year.
Yeah, most people just want to go to Barcelona, but I would say skip it and go south to Sevilla.
Yeah, Sevilla is beautiful. And just the architecture is so different as well. And the tapas. And yeah, it's really, really nice. I like it there. I would totally go back. All right. One cultural quirk that still surprises you.
Well, it doesn't surprise me. I just hate it. That's just showing my age. I'm sorry, but I hate it that they eat dinner so late in both like Greece and here in Portugal. It's like a later culture, and I hate it. And then sometimes coffee shops aren't open until like 9. I'm like, why? We needed this at 7.
Granted, again, I just go on vacation there. I'm not living abroad, but with my job back at home being a high school teacher, I have to be awake at like 5:30 in the morning. So I'm ready for dinner, girl, at like 4 p.m. And if you say that over in Portugal, Spain, Greece, they're going to look at you like you are crazy.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, it doesn't. It's the way Berlin really works for me. It is. It's an earlier city for sure.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. What's always in your carry-on bag?
My laptop, sadly. I guess I'm always. Yeah.
That's a good one. I have to start bringing that with me every trip. Like after I lost my phone in Crete and it like flew to the bottom of the Gulf of Heraklion, I feel like I need backup electronics now. That like scarred me
Yeah.
for life. So
Yeah.
I'm going to be right there with you with my laptop. All right, last one. Dream destination you haven't visited yet.
This is a good question. I've really wanted to go to Morocco, so it is on the list. It's not far from me now too, so that is a place I'd
Yeah.
like to go.
Yeah. How far is the flight from Portugal to Morocco? Probably only like an hour and a half, maybe, if that.
Yeah, it's very close. So maybe
Right.
20.
Awesome. I know. I'm already like planning. I want to do like something big in 2026. I don't know if I'll have the time, but I'm already like looking at that travel calendar. It's so bad. I'm trying to save all my points just because like things are expensive, but I'm like ready to to book multiple trips. It's so bad.
I mean, I encourage this. I'm the
Oh yeah.
worst. I'm like,
Me
just
too.
spend.
Me too. I'm just like, just book it. It doesn't matter. The money will come back. So, speaking of the future, Melissa, before we wrap up, can you tell us about any upcoming tours or projects you're excited about and to share your final message for anyone dreaming of taking that leap to move abroad?
Yeah, the next year I have 8 departures scheduled. So it's going to be Portugal, a few in Greece, including Crete. So we got the Greek islands, Crete. We've got Spain, southern Spain, so Sevilla, as I mentioned, and southern Portugal in one trip. Sicily, and putting Ireland on for the first time and actually going there in a couple weeks to check everything out. And then another Christmas market tour next year for Germany.
That's fantastic. That sounds like a lot of fun. So, where can our listeners find these tours online?
So you can go to my website, which is asinglewomantraveling.com. Don't get that confused with A Solo Woman Traveling. That's the name of the brand. The URL is A Single Woman Traveling. On socials, it's A Solo Woman Traveling. And I have them all listed there on my blog and on Instagram, so you can find them in either place.
All right, fantastic. And we'll be sure to include all of that in the show notes as well. And we really appreciate you being back on again and sharing your inspiration with us and encouraging everyone to, make sure they're doing their taxes right before they move overseas. So super important. Yeah, don't mess with the IRS, listeners. So huge thanks to Melissa for joining us today and sharing her story. If you want to keep up with her adventures, you can find Melissa at A Solo Woman Traveling, where she shares travel tips, stories, and so much more. And thank you for tuning into this episode of Bon Voyage Besties. We loved having Melissa back on the show. She's been living abroad since 2017, and she continues to inspire us all. I know I'm going to take a look at her tours later today and research all of those visas again, because that just seems amazing. So if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow, subscribe, and share it with your travel besties. So until next time, safe travels and bon voyage.